Okay, so imagine this. You've just sailed across the ocean in the early 1500s. You get off your ship, and you see a city built on an island that is bigger, cleaner, and honestly more amazing than Paris or London at the time.
We're talking about Tenochtitlan, the massive capital of the Aztec Empire. It was this absolute engineering miracle.
A city basically floating on a lake.
Hmm.
So the huge question has always been, how did a really small group of Spanish soldiers, led by just one guy, Hernan Cortes, manage to take it all down?
Exactly. How does this incredibly powerful, advanced society fall to a few hundred men?
That's what we're going to unpack today. We're focusing on the key decisions, the surprising alliances, and, well, some other devastating factors that allowed this to happen.
Right. So let's start with the man himself, Cortes. He was born in 1485 in Spain. His family was what you'd call lower nobility.
And so they had a title, but not a lot of money to go with it.
Exactly. And the stories say he was a pretty sickly kid, which meant he spent a lot of time indoors reading.
Which probably made him smarter and more strategic later on.
I think so. His parents had a plan for him, a safe one. They sent him to university to study law.
But you have to remember the time. This is right after Columbus. Stories are flooding into Spain about gold, adventure, new worlds. Law school must have seemed incredibly boring.
Yeah, he was not cut out for a quiet life. So at 19, he drops out and heads for the New World. He starts in Hispaniola, learning how to be a soldier, an explorer.
So he wasn't some rookie just showing up. He'd been in the colonies for years, building a reputation in Cuba. He was ambitious.
Very. And that ambition leads him to 1519. He pulls together 11 ships, a few hundred soldiers, and sets sail from Cuba for the Mexican mainland.
And when he lands, he does something that is just.
Yeah.
It's legendary. It tells you everything you need to know about his personality.
The big one. He burns his own ships.
Or, well, he scuttled them, sank them, but the effect was the same.
Right. It was this huge psychological move. He was basically telling his men, there's no going back.
Think about it. No retreat, no plan B. The only way home, the only way to survive and get rich, is to march forward and win.
It was conquer or die. And while they're setting up their base there, near Veracruz, they start hearing all these rumors from local tribes.
Rumors about a massive empire inland, all ruled by one powerful emperor, Montezuma.
And they also learned something else, something really important. Not everyone loved the Aztecs.
That's putting it mildly. As they start to march inland, they run straight into a group called the Tlaxcalans. And at first, they fight.
Oh yeah, the Tlaxcalans were fierce warriors. But after a few battles, they start to notice something.
Spanish weapons?
Exactly. The Spanish had steel swords, metal armor, things the Tlaxcalans' obsidian weapons just couldn't break.
And then there were the cannons. And the horses, which were like these terrifying war beasts to people who'd never seen them before.
So the Tlaxcalans had a choice. Keep fighting this enemy with super advanced tech, or maybe make a deal.
And what pushed them to make a deal was their deep, burning hatred for the Aztecs.
Right. The Aztecs had been oppressing them for generations. They forced them to pay tribute, not just in goods, but in people for their human sacrifices.
So when the Spanish showed up, the Tlaxcalans didn't just see an invader. They saw a weapon they could use against their biggest enemy.
And that alliance was maybe the single most important factor in the whole conquest. Cortes got thousands of elite native warriors on his side. Without them, his few hundred Spaniards would have been wiped out.
No question. But it wasn't just about military might. They also needed to communicate, to understand the politics. And that brings us to another key figure.
Malintzin. She was a young native woman who was given to Cortes. The Spanish later called her Doña Marina.
And she turned out to be a genius, an incredible linguist.
She spoke Mayan, but crucially, she also spoke Nahuatl, which was the language of the Aztecs. She was the key that unlocked everything.
At first, she worked with a Spanish priest. She'd translate from Nahuatl to Mayan, and he'd translate from Mayan to Spanish.
But she learned Spanish herself incredibly fast. And she did way more than just translate words. She explained the culture, the politics. She'd tell Cortes, this chief is loyal to Montezuma, but that one secretly hates him.
So Cortes was never moving blind. He had inside information. He could play different groups against each other. It was a huge strategic advantage.
So now, with his new allies and his incredible interpreter, he finally marches into the Valley of Mexico. And they see it. Tenochtitlan.
And you just can't overstate their reaction. The sources, like the letters from the soldiers, they say it was like something from a dream.
This huge city on an island, connected by these wide stone roads, these causeways. The main marketplace was bigger than any in Europe.
And the city was so organized. To feed hundreds of thousands of people, they built these things called chinampas.
We call them floating gardens. They were basically man-made islands in the lake where they could grow crops all year round. Incredibly fertile, incredibly productive.
The city was also amazingly clean. They had canal sisters that worked like streets, but also for waste removal. People bathed regularly. It was way more hygienic than, say, London at the time.
It was a sophisticated society. They had schools for nobles and commoners. They were amazing artisans.
But there was one part of their culture that deeply shocked the Spanish.
Human sacrifice. It was a central part of their religion, performed at their huge temples to honor the gods. And the Spanish were absolutely horrified by it.
Right. So even with all this wonder, there was this massive cultural gap.
Mm-hmm.
Still, when Cortes and his men finally arrive at the city gates, Emperor Montezuma welcomes them.
He treats them like honored guests, puts them up in a palace. It was a strange decision. Maybe diplomatic, maybe he was just unsure what to make of them.
But Cortes saw an opportunity and a trap. He knew he was on an island, surrounded by a massive, potentially hostile army.
So he makes his next huge, incredibly risky move.
He walks into the emperor's palace and takes Montezuma hostage.
It's an unbelievable gamble. His plan was to rule the entire Aztec Empire by controlling its leader.
Like a puppeteer. But the plan backfired pretty quickly.
It did. The Spanish started demanding huge amounts of gold and silver. They forced Montezuma to become their tax collector.
And that just humiliated him. The Aztec nobles, the warriors, they saw their godlike emperor being ordered around by these strangers. The city started to boil with anger.
It all explodes in June of 1520. The Spanish realize they've pushed too far and they have to escape the city or be killed. This is the famous Noche Triste.
The Night of Sorrows?
Yes. They try to sneak out at night down one of the causeways during a storm, but they're discovered.
And the Aztecs attack from all sides. On the causeway, from thousands of canoes in the water, it was a total disaster for the Spanish.
And here's the really tragic part. A lot of the Spanish soldiers who died didn't die from weapons. They drowned.
Why? Because they were so weighed down with the gold they were trying to escape with, their greed literally pulled them under the water.
Cortes lost more than half of his men, almost all his horses. It was a complete rout. He and the survivors barely managed to limp back to their allies in Tlaxcala.
It looked like it was over, but it wasn't, because the Spanish had left behind an invisible killer. A disease that Europeans had lived with for centuries, so they had some immunity. But the native people of the Americas,
They had zero immunity. It was a biological catastrophe.
the disease just tore through Tenochtitlan. Some estimates say it killed nearly half the population. People were dying by the thousands every day.
And it wasn't just the number of dead. It killed warriors, farmers, and leaders. Montezuma was already dead, killed in the chaos of the escape. Then smallpox killed his successor.
So right when the empire needed strong leadership to fight off the Spanish, its command structure completely collapsed.
The epidemic did more damage to the Aztec Empire than any Spanish cannon ever could. And all this was happening while Cortes was regrouping, planning his return.
And he comes back with a new plan, a smarter plan.
Yes, he has thousands of Tlaxcalan allies and he's rebuilt his Spanish forces, but his key new strategy involves the lake. He has his men build 13 small warships.
Right there, by the lake. These ships, brigantines, gave him total control of the water. The Aztec canoes couldn't compete.
So in May 1521, the final siege begins. His massive army blocks all the causeways so no food can get in.
And then, the most devastating move. They find and destroy the aqueducts that brought fresh water into the city.
The city is cut off. For 80 days, they suffer from starvation, thirst, and disease, all while being attacked constantly.
It's just horrific. The end finally comes in August 1521, when the last Aztec ruler, Cuauhtémoc, is captured trying to escape in a boat.
And with his capture, the Aztec Empire was officially gone. Tenochtitlan was in ruins.
And Cortes immediately starts building something new right on top of it. He calls it New Spain.
The rubble of the Aztec temples and palaces was cleared away to build Mexico City. The main cathedral was built directly on top of the ruins of the Aztecs' Great Temple.
It was a very deliberate statement. A new culture being built, literally, on the old one. Spanish language, Spanish laws, and Christianity replaced the old ways.
And that mixing, that collision of cultures, is what eventually created the society of modern Mexico.
So when you look back, it was never just about guns or a brave leader. It was this perfect storm, really.
It was. It was strategy, for sure, but also key local alliances that came from years of Aztec oppression, and then the terrible accidental power of disease.
And I think that image of Mexico City built on top of Tenochtitlan is so powerful. It's not just about destruction. It shows how one culture can rise directly from the foundations of another. It makes you wonder, what parts of that ancient Aztec foundation are still there, underneath the surface of the modern city today? Good luck with your studies.